Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Sports Corner at Choose Adventure Media. My name is Zach, and in tonight's episode, I'll be giving an instant reaction to the Oregon Ducks with their huge win over the USC Trojans. That was an amazing game, one of the most entertaining games to watch this season. The Ducks played great. I think the defense really stepped up big, especially in the second half. Obviously, Dante looked back to the form that we saw earlier on in the season. And honestly, this is the Ducks' biggest win of the season, and they really needed this to get into the playoff. If you watched the game, you saw the statistic that the broadcasters put up. With a win, the Ducks have a 90% chance to make the playoff, and with a loss, they would have had, I think, like a 20 or somewhere around there. So this one was huge. Huge game. It was an interesting matchup. I think Will Stein called a brilliant game. Obviously, the running backs had a great game. And like I said, the defense stepped up big, especially they showed some weakness in the beginning with some pass defense struggles, but they really stepped up big in that second half. I think they only allowed 100 yards passing in the second half. I'm going to confirm that right now. They had 236 passing in the first half, and they had 330 total. So the defense only gave up 94 yards passing in the second half. That's amazing. That's going to be huge down the stretch. Obviously, the defense is phenomenal against the run, only allowing 52 rushing yards for the game on 1.9 yards per carry. Defense played phenomenally. Like I said multiple times on this stream, I think the defense is the strength of this team this season. And tonight they proved that to be true. As always, would love to hear from you guys in the chat. What were you guys most impressed with? What were you most... need to change this. 42-17 or 27. There it is. And then, sorry about that. Okay. And I'm going to leave the title saying Ducks dominate 42-27 because really they were in control of the game the entire time. It got a little precarious down the stretch, and on the first drive, it really looked like USC was unstoppable. That was pretty gutsy by them to take the ball after winning the toss and then, wanting the ball. That's very rare to see. And they were able to score. And usually that can be that's a big hit to start off with. But the defense just stepped up big, and that's why I've always kind of looked at this game as an opportunity, right? Like, even if they struggled, I think the Ducks would take this as a great opportunity because USC is an opponent that we haven't played a lot of teams like that. Also, if you watch the broadcast, you saw the statistics for the passing yards rankings by the offenses that the Ducks have played. And honestly, they haven't played a ton of great passing offenses. So tonight was a great opportunity for the Ducks to get some more experience against an elite passing team. USC is one of the top 10 passing teams in the entire country. Jaden Mayava is great. He has some great elite wide receivers on the outside that we saw tonight. Gave some of our corners some trouble, especially in the first half. But the defense learned, and that was really exciting to see the tremendous way that this team grew while we were like in the middle of a game. Like, that's so exciting, especially when we have a team as young as the Ducks. I'm gonna spoil later on. Usually I do the helmet sticker segment, but Jaden Kennedy absolutely deserves a helmet sticker. He played phenomenally tonight. I've been critical of his pass coverage earlier on in the season, but he was arguably our best coverage guy today. Yes, he had one defensive pass interference, but then huge interception that he had in the second half, and he had several other pass breakups and almost interceptions earlier on in the game. So Jaden Kennedy stepped up big, proving he's not just a nickel corner. He can play slot, and he can play a little bit outside, which is going to be a big boost to his NFL draft prospect rankings. Good evening, everyone. Would love to hear from you guys in the chat what you guys thought about the game, what you guys think about this means for the Ducks moving forward. As always, love to hear from you guys. I think Dante Moore looked incredible. He had a pedestrian, and I'm saying that sarcastically, 73% completion percentage, 257 yards, 2 touchdowns, and just one bad interception. That was a pretty bad interception because, like the broadcasters say, clearly the receivers didn't run the right routes, or it's a poor play design or something like that. But Dante still shouldn't have thrown it in the first place. Why are you throwing it to the area where you have two wide receivers that are on top of each other? I believe it was on a first down, so there was no need, to pick up the first down. Just throw it away and kind of worry about it later. If I had to guess, I think Justice Lowe should have taken the post a little bit higher. I think that's what happened on that play, but nonetheless, that's a bad interception on Dante. You want to see him throw that one away. But other than that, I mean, he made some great throws. Kenyon Sadiq had a phenomenal game on the offensive side of the ball. He was huge tonight. 6 receptions, 72 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But I feel like that doesn't really capture just how important he was tonight. Obviously, Malik Benson, he deserves a helmet sticker as well with the punt return, with the way that he stepped up on the offensive side of the ball. Again, yes, he technically had an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, but Malik Benson has stepped up huge, honestly, the last few weeks, ever since Gary Bryant Jr. went down in the Iowa game and we were without Decorrian Moore. Malik Benson and Kenyon Sadiq tonight were extremely important, as well as Jeremiah McClellan and Jamari Johnson. They stepped up huge. I'm just really happy with this offense, and I think that this is, again, another step in the progression. The last couple of live streams I've been saying, I think this is something to build on. This is something to build on, but the team is getting there. And the lights were the brightest tonight that they've been since the Penn State game. And arguably they were brighter tonight because the Penn State game was so early on, right? And we didn't know what Penn State was going to be. You think even if you lose that game close, it's kind of, it's still a good resume point. But then whenever Penn State season fell apart, Oregon didn't have a ton on their resume. But the big win over Iowa a couple of weeks ago, and then a big win at home over USC in a game that they really controlled the game the entire time. That's going to go a long way for the Ducks getting a home playoff game to kick off the college football playoff. If I had to guess, it's basically a guarantee unless they look really bad and get, everyone injured in the Washington game. But even still, I think they would probably still get in. Jordan Davison looked phenomenal tonight, especially in the first half. He didn't get a ton of touches in the second half, but great vision and, great power as always. Gotta love the rushing touchdown to Bryce Betcher down on the goal line. It's always cool to see that, especially on senior day, and a guy like Bryce Betcher that just is Oregon football, just physical, local guy, loves the team, loves the organization, loves the city. So really cool to see that happen. Obviously, a couple of key injuries on the offensive line. They had to shuffle some guys around, but I think that's also a plus because the guys played really well. Oh gosh, I'm going to blank on his name now. 1 second. I got to look up the guy who stepped in at center. Picard? I think it's Picard. Oh, Charlie Pickard. There it is. Charlie Pickard played phenomenally well whenever he had to come in for Poncho, whenever he went down at center. With Isaiah World was in and out of the lineup. Alex Harkey was in and out of the lineup. He got banged up with an ankle. Janoris Wilson was completely out tonight. So the offensive line depth stepped up huge, and that is one of the benefits of if you can keep a roster together while you bring in transfers, like the Ducks brought in Isaiah World, Emmanuel Pregnon, and Alex Harkey in the offseason. You have guys like Kawika Rogers, Charlie Pickard, Matthew Bedford, guys who have played before in these depth positions. So then whenever you are in a kind of a worst case scenario like tonight where we're on our 4th or 5th string tackle, these guys can come in, they know how to play. There's no rookie mistakes or anything like that because these guys have seen and played a lot of football. So I think that's a large credit to Alik Terry, who I believe he's the offensive line coach, right? Alik Terry, Oregon. Yeah, Alik Terry is one of the very best assistant coaches in college football. He's the offensive line coach for Oregon. And huge credit to him, but it's also a huge credit to the way that Dan Lanning has built this roster. And it's not just great at the top. There's great depth, which is a really unique skill, especially in how much college football has changed over the last couple of years with the transfer portal, with NIL. So huge credit to Dan Lanning. I think, and I haven't talked about Will Stein enough. Will Stein called a phenomenal game. And look, there's going to be mixed reviews on Will Stein tonight. I think he called a masterful game, especially that fourth quarter drive. Took 6 minutes off the clock, scored a touchdown. I love the way with how balanced the game plan was tonight. A lot of people are probably going to question why we didn't run the ball more. But I mean, we still had 41 rushing attempts and 4.5 yards per carry. And then we had 257 passing yards on 30 pass attempts. So you know what? I'm perfectly fine with the balance. And if you score 42 points at this level, you should have a defense that should be a win. I think Micah Parsons in the NFL said it really well earlier on in the year. And he said, offense, if you can get us 20 points, we can win the game. And obviously, that's the NFL and this is college football and he's Micah Parsons and that hasn't worked for them. But I think that's a good kind of ballpark range, giving up 27 to USC, one of the most explosive offenses in the entire country, with as young of a secondary as we have. Our secondary grew up so much tonight. Like, I hope you guys realize just how much Ife Obadegwu stepped up. Brandon Finney Jr. got picked on a lot tonight. He grew up, and we watched him grow up. And he played phenomenally against the run, and he stepped up big later on in the game. Jaden Kennedy played great, even though he's an experienced guy. Dylan Thieneman played great. Aaron Flowers, he was kind of hot and cold tonight, but he stepped up big, and he made some big plays in pass coverage tonight, which is not one of their strengths. So tonight isn't only a great win in the past tense, but it's a great win in the future tense in terms of what this is going to do for the team's growth overall. And if Oregon does play Ohio State in the playoff, like it's looking more and more likely, or if somehow one of them Indiana or Ohio State loses next week and we have to play Indiana in the Big Ten Championship, or we play Ohio State in the Big Ten Championship, this team is way more ready now than they were even 5 hours ago for that matchup. Obviously the defensive line is phenomenal. I mean, Matayo Uiagalelei, he hasn't had the best statistical year, but he's just been such a disruptor, and I don't think he gets enough credit. I'm pulling up his exact stats on the season. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, so he only has 4 sacks on the season so far when he had 10.5. A little bit disappointing, but I mean, he's been getting to the quarterback, and I would love to see his pressure numbers. He's been generating a lot of pressure throughout the season, which arguably is a better statistic. And then Tatum Tuioti on the other side. Nasir Wyatt, he came up big tonight, and I love the way that the coaching staff is starting to rotate him in. I don't think he got enough love tonight, but anytime he was in, he was a disruptor. Nasir Wyatt is a true freshman, I believe. But defensive end, huge. He has an elite spin move already for a true freshman. Let's see. Nasir Wyatt, it says freshman. Yeah, so he's a true freshman as well from the Santa Ana area. Also went to Mater Dei. He's going to be really exciting to watch. And the Ducks' defensive line is in great hands in the future with, whenever Matayo and Tatum leave this year, we got guys in the wings like, Nasir Wyatt, Blake Purchase, great options on the outside. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I would love to hear from you guys in the chat. What did you guys think about the game? What were you most impressed with? What were you most disappointed in? Right now, I'm just talking about the depth on the defense and how I'm looking at this as a great learning opportunity for this team moving forward. And it's not just a great win to add to the resume, but it's a phenomenal win for this team to learn. So would love to hear from you guys in the chat. I always love to hear your questions and comments. This team is so young, and that's kind of been one of the biggest critiques the entire year, especially whenever we've had so many injuries, on the offensive line, at the wide receiver position. But this team, it's always just this big, next man up mentality. And that's one of the benefits of Dan Lanning coming from the Kirby Smart coaching tree, is that these guys, they play all the time. Like you look at Trayvon Walker, at Georgia, in his freshman year, he got some, a few snaps. And then sophomore year, you get a little bit more snaps. And then finally by junior year, that's when you're a starter. But you already have so much experience that it's more of just you're building stats at that point. And you're building your NFL draft resume at that point. And Dan Lanning's been doing the exact same thing here at Oregon. Ashton Porter, redshirt sophomore. Elijah Rushing, redshirt freshman. Where's Blake Purchase? Blake Purchase, redshirt sophomore. Nasir Wyatt, true freshman. Zadavian Sims got in earlier in the year. And then obviously out in the secondary, Ifeoma Badegwu, redshirt freshman. Aaron Flowers, redshirt freshman. Brandon Finney, true freshman. Kingston Lopa, redshirt freshman. Dalen Austin, redshirt sophomore. Peyton Woodyard, true sophomore. If Trey McNutt wouldn't have gotten hurt, he would be getting more snaps as a true freshman. Neem Offord, true freshman. So Dan Lanning rotates so many guys, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. And I know I've talked about it before, but it's so critical in the modern era of college football, where it's not just a 14 game season anymore. Like, it's not just 12 regular season, conference championship. The Ducks, to make it to the championship, they're most likely going to have to play the 12 regular season games, and then most likely first round playoff, quarter, semi, and final. So that's another 4 games of 16 games. So it's huge when you have the experience and depth, and then it's huge in the more complex than ever era of roster building to be able to have the depth and to play the youth. And it's a great recruiting point, and it's just why Dan Lanning is one of the best coaches in the entire country. It's because he knows how to build a roster in today's modern era. He knows how to connect with his players. He says the things that a lot of other coaches say, but you can tell he has substance behind it. And he's one of the best coaches at preparing his team for big moments like tonight. And then on top of it all, he's a phenomenal defensive mind as well. And he's just the perfect coach for Oregon. Again, Dante Moore looked phenomenal tonight. Outside of that one interception, I think he played darn near a perfect game. And Will Stein, I've been really critical of him before, and even in the subreddit, a lot of people were being critical of not running the ball more. But I think the balance was extremely important tonight. And someone else said, please stop running these screens. But the problem with that is, without running those swing screens in moderation, you don't have the seam ball to Kenyon Sadiq for the 27-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter. You don't have, even the quick slant. That was one of the first pass plays of the season of Malik Benson that went for 25 yards. Those things don't exist without the swing screens in moderation. It's like, if you only eat junk food, you're going to be feeling like crap, right? But if you only eat vegetables, you're going to be depressed. Like, you want to have something excited to eat. Who knows? Maybe you're really into vegetables. But what I'm saying is, you got to have your vegetables. You got to establish the run. You got to have these swing screens because it opens up the defense. And then it sets up those big, fun, down the field, shots that everyone loves and that this team has really excelled at. And especially once we get Gary Bryant Jr. back and DeCorian Moore back, and mixing that in with, even if we get, what's his name? The Texas A&M guy who has been out all year. Evan Stewart. If we could get Stu back, DeCorian Moore, Jeremiah McClellan, and Malik Benson have had to step up big. All of a sudden, this unit that's currently kind of a weakness with injuries is going to be a major strength for the Ducks. Again, at the right time. I've been talking about it all season. The Ducks just need to get hot at the right time. And this challenging November schedule is a phenomenal opportunity to do that. The big win at Iowa to prove that we can be a physical team, that we still are one of the best teams in the country. They did that on the road. A dominant win over a team that they should be dominant over last week, with Minnesota at home. They did that. They can score a big, high-scoring affair against one of the best offenses in the entire country. They did that tonight. And now they have an opportunity to go again, play on in a tough road environment, in a rivalry game. They can prove that they can take advantage of that defense, and they can absolutely stifle that offense with all the playmakers that they have. So this is a phenomenal opportunity for the Ducks. And I know I'm biased, but this is such a great opportunity for them to get hot at the right moment. And this is the closest that I think the Ducks have shown that of them playing up to their true potential. The Wisconsin game, they didn't play up to their full potential. The Rutgers game, they played good, but they didn't play up to their full potential. This is a great opportunity to play up to your full potential at the right moment. And like, this team has the talent to win it all. Like, I've been saying it all year, and I'm not backing off of it. This team has the talent to win it all. Sorry, gotta take a sip of water. It was nice to see, and also Jamari Johnson. I was critical of Jamari Johnson earlier on in the year, but he's really emerged as a really consistent, reliable weapon. And he's only a redshirt sophomore, so he's got some more eligibility left, so that would be exciting to keep him. But I mean, this team's in great hands. Love Noah Whittington. It's sad. This was could have been his last home game as a Duck. What were his stats on the day? Noah Whittington, 19 carries, 104 yards, average of 5.5 with 1 touchdown. Just proving, he's just so consistent at what he does. Like broadcasters were saying, he fights for every play. He's so fast and aggressive in the way that he hits the hole and the way that he's able to break tackles. He's just such an exciting player to watch. DR Hill, did what DR Hill does. 4 carries for 28 yards. Average of 11 or of 7, and he only had a long of 11. So it's pretty. A lot of his runs were around his average, which I think is a great use for him. And I think he had 1 catch, or I'm sorry, 2 catches for 9 yards. Love the use of DR Hill, especially with guys like DeCorrine Moore and Evan Stewart out. Wish we would incorporate him a little bit more, getting him outside into open field situations. But obviously the team put up 42 points tonight, just fine. Let's see. The USC defense, they improved in the second half. In the first half, they looked god-awful. Like, they are already bad, and then their first, the first touchdown the Ducks scored, the pitch play to Jordan Davison, their best defensive player didn't move. He should have been all over the field. And I mean, even these numbers are deflated a little bit, because there were the 3 consecutive plays that were pass plays that Dante Moore hit the wide receivers and they just dropped them. And that easily could have been another touchdown. At least would have been another field goal. Now I guess I have to talk about the refs. I don't want to, but I'm going to set I'm going to look at the clock. I'm going to give them 60 seconds. If you guys ever wonder why there's missed calls in a football game, it's so that games don't devolve into what they did tonight. Because if you call everything like they were calling tonight, they were, a lot of the calls were textbook calls. Like, yes, that is technically that penalty. However, if you miss a call, like they started missing face masks on Noah Whittington at the end, the pass interference calls get really, subjective, then that's when you're starting to make the game about yourself and not about the play on the field. So if you ever wonder why there's missed calls, it's so that the refs don't make the game about them. I truly believe the common saying that you hear all the time, you can call holding on almost any play. I believe that. But does it affect the play, right? And then what is your, benchmark? What is your threshold for calling a holding penalty? That's all very important. And I think what makes a good ref versus a bad ref isn't just, are you making all the right all the calls that are technically the penalty, but it's what does it apply to the context of the game? I know I'm going over my 60 seconds. I think a lot of the pass interference calls on the Ducks were fair until the second half. They started to get really egregious and really nitpicky with the pass interference calls. And then I think the holding penalties started to get a little ticky-tacky as well. There was one on the Jeremiah McClellan one on the outside. It's like, it's technically holding. Is that defender going to make the play? No. So I digress. I don't want to make my live stream about the refs because they made the entire game about them, but both the USC wide receivers and the Oregon Ducks DBs play physically. So let them play. They both have hands on each other. If they're Greco-Roman wrestling each other down the sideline, let them play. That's the threshold. That's the benchmark for if it's a pass interference or not. I digress. So I'm going to talk more about positive stuff. So I'm going to talk about the defensive tackles. Played extremely well. Obviously, Bear Alexander has been playing extremely well all year. But then guys like Amari Washington stepped up big tonight. Like I said, Ashton Porter, Nasir Wyatt on the outside. This defense was already great. And while they did give up, 330 passing yards, only giving up 94 in the second half. That's huge. That's phenomenal. And that's just a huge credit to the way that Dan Lanning was able to adapt even in the first quarter. Or I'm sorry, in the first half. You saw them start to bracket Jaden Kennedy or bracket Mekhi Lemon by having a guy play underneath and then having Dylan Thieneman play over the top. Overall, I think the safety play was better tonight. We've seen a lot of busted coverages from the safeties just because they are so run aggressive. But I think the safeties played well tonight. And obviously, with only allowing 94 yards and the way that they were able to help over the top, there were a couple of plays where there was one play in particular, I think it was in the first half, Theron Johnson was in decent position man coverage on the outside for once. And then there should have just been more safety help over the top. I think, it was Dalen Austin. And there just wasn't. The safety was late rotating over, and that resulted in a completion. But I've talked about in this stream before, this team loves to run a lot of man coverage, and I was worried. I was worried tonight because obviously USC has some of the best wide receivers in college football. And I was worried that we didn't have the DBs to play man coverage, so we'd be forced to playing a lot of zone. And I didn't think we'd be able to improve in playing the zone the way that we were able to improve throughout the game. So that was huge. And honestly, the Ducks also proved that while they are young on the outside, they can improve during a game. And that was something that I don't think last year's team had. And so while they were getting burned in man coverage early, and while, they had a couple of zone mistakes, they tightened up zone and they tightened up in man and played really well and only gave up 94 passing yards in the second half. Yes, there were some pass interference calls, so technically that number should be larger if you incorporate that, but I digress. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I thought the game was gonna be closer. I thought the betting line coming into the game was 10.5. So Oregon was projected to win by 10.5 points. I thought that was gonna be a few too many points. I liked I thought USC's offense was going to give us a little bit more trouble. I thought they would maybe be able to run the ball a little bit better than they were. They couldn't. They could not run to save their lives tonight. 52 rushing yards on 28 attempts. That's just an insane 1.9 yards per rush. What did they come into this game rushing? Let's see, NCAA stats. Rushing offense. Okay, they're not in the top 20 or anything. Oh, they came into this game 28th in rushing offense, averaging 190 yards per game and 5.6 yards per rush. And the Ducks were able to hold them to 1.9. That's just so exciting going down the stretch. Going into next week's game against Washington, obviously they have an elite passing game. But I mean, running the ball translates. And especially whenever we get into the playoffs, this is something that college football hasn't typically had to deal with. But in the NFL game, you have to be able to run the ball in December and January to be a Super Bowl champion. And I think that's going to start to translate more and more into college football as we get obviously more into the 12-team football, the 12-team playoff, as we get into, if they make it 16 or freaking 24 like they're talking about doing, you're gonna need to run the ball in these cold weather games. So if Oregon can get an Alabama to have to come to Eugene in the first round of the playoffs, and they can just run the ball, in a worst case scenario cold weather type event, that's huge, and that's a huge advantage for Oregon. And if you look at it, a lot of the teams of the best rushing offenses in the country aren't going to be playoff teams. Navy, currently Utah's number 2, but they're currently on the outside looking in on the playoff. Air Force, Army, Jacksonville State, Missouri, James Madison may technically get in. Florida State, Michigan most likely on the outside looking in. Then you have Indiana. So you have to get all the way down to the 13th ranked rushing offense before you get a playoff contender. And then after that, it's just a bunch of group of 5. So what I'm saying with that is, like, the Ducks are really sticking out this year in their ability to run the ball. It seems that a lot of other offenses in the country aren't able to run the ball this year. Don't know why. Like the Georgias aren't dominating the run game like they have before. Ohio State last year with their 2 elite running backs. The rushing offenses just aren't there this year, but there is phenomenal quarterback play, obviously, with guys like Fernando Mendoza, Julian Sand. But the Ducks tonight proved that they can keep up with an elite passing offense. And, especially with the way that, the offense was called tonight. If Will Stein calls games like that, the Ducks are winning the championship. Like, there's no doubt about it. There were a couple of lulls here and there. If we want to get really nitpicky, like, I think coming out of out of halftime, the Ducks were a little flat-footed, and then at the start of the fourth quarter, the first 2 plays, the Ducks were a little flat-footed. But after that, like, the Ducks would have beaten anyone tonight. I think they played an amazing game, including all the injuries. The Ducks really need to get healthy. That's going to be big going down the stretch. But at least Dan Lanning's saying that Decorian Moore's not out for season. It doesn't seem like Gary Bryant Jr. is out for season. It doesn't seem like any of our offensive linemen are out for season. So I think the Ducks are going to get healthy. Obviously the Ducks have a huge game coming up next week against Washington. Big rivalry game. Let's see. So it seems that, looking ahead to next week's game against Washington, it seems like they have a pretty balanced offense. They're 34th in passing yards, 59th in rushing yards, 34th in points points scored per game. So they have a pretty explosive offense. But again, this USC game was the perfect prep game before going on the road to Washington, playing in a tough environment. The Ducks, it'll be crucial for the Ducks to shut down that explosive offense. But the Ducks set themselves up really, really nicely for a spot at in the college football playoff tonight. I'm going to go to the nationwide playoff predictor. Or I'm sorry, All-State, my bad, not nationwide. Okay. So Oregon, so they beat USC, and then if they lose to Washington, worst case scenario, Oregon still has an 87% chance to make the playoff. At that point, this simulation predicted that they get the 6th seed, and they play James Madison. But then what if they win? I'm going to say Oregon doesn't make the conference championship game. So that's interesting. Wow. Huh. I don't know how much faith you guys put in the All-State playoff predictor. I haven't played with it a ton. I've only played with it a little bit. But if Oregon beats Washington, this simulation predicted that they would get the 3rd seed. Huh. I wish it would explore a little bit more about what that means. But the top 4 seeds are Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon, Georgia. So that must have Texas A&M losing. Texas A&M's not even in the playoff in this. Okay, I need a different simulation, because that was saying Texas A&M didn't make the playoff at all, and I think even if Texas A&M loses to Texas, I think they're in. So Oregon wins. They won today. They beat Washington. They don't make the conference championship game. Man, this next simulation also had Oregon getting the 3rd playoff seed. And again, Texas A&M not making the playoff. I don't quite understand how that works. I'm going to try to play with it to see, like, are they saying if Texas A&M loses to Texas, they're out? So Texas A&M beat Samford. Let's say Texas beats them, which I don't think is likely. Let's say at that point, I'm currently talking about playoff chances. So would love to hear from you guys about, what you think this means for the playoff, how you think the Ducks will fare in the playoffs, who do you want to see in the playoffs, which teams do you not want to play in the playoffs? Would love to hear from you guys. I guess worst case scenario, let's say Texas A&M doesn't make the conference championship game after losing to Texas. I'm getting a lot of simulations in the All-State Playoff Predictor. Again, don't know how much faith to put in this thing. That are, everything's giving Oregon the 3 seed if they beat Washington. That would be pretty exciting. Don't know how they end up with a better resume than Georgia. How Oregon ends up with a better resume than Georgia. But I mean, I think the Ducks have a better resume than Ole Miss. They have a better resume than Oklahoma. They have a better resume than Alabama's a tough one. Man, that's tough. I don't know if I agree with this All-State Playoff Predictor. I'm gonna go the AP poll, or I'm gonna go college football playoff rankings. Alright, college football playoff rankings. So, Oregon won today, and all the teams in front of them won, and won convincingly or didn't play. Let's see. So I don't think the top 12 will change much in this. I don't know. That's a tough one. I wonder if they're saying because Ole Miss. Oh, and what if they're taking into consideration the whole Lane Kiffin leaving thing? I think Lane Kiffin's gone. Just side note. I don't think there's any way he stays. But I'm going to the Ole Miss football schedule. Their big wins. Okay, so they beat Florida, fine, 3-win team. They beat South Carolina, Citadel, whatever. They beat Oklahoma at home, or at Oklahoma. They lost to Georgia. Ooh, Ole Miss doesn't have a very good resume. I didn't think they did. Like, just the eye test, I've never thought that they were a top 10 team. But especially looking at their resume, they have one good win over an Oklahoma team on the road, and they have a decent loss to Georgia on the road. But then, I mean, I would say beating Iowa on the road's a good win for Oregon. Obviously, beating USC at home's a good win. I still count the win at Penn State as a good win because people are counting it as a good win for Indiana. So I think it should absolutely be a good win for Oregon. That's a tough one. So I do feel, if I was a betting man, I would put money on Oregon's going to land somewhere between a 5 and a 7 seed if they beat Washington, which I think they will, which would be a huge advantage for them. Obviously, given last year's events, I think every Ducks fan really wants a home playoff game. Plus, that would just be a really cool environment. Like I was talking about the other day, I would have a really hard time not going to that game. If there was a home playoff game at Autzen, I think that would be a sick environment. But yeah, so with this week's playoff rankings, assuming nothing changes, because I don't think it will, Oregon would be playing Alabama at home. Absolutely. That would be an amazing environment. And I think that matchup sets up really well for Oregon. Again, especially after the game that they just won today. Obviously, Alabama has a great passing game with Ty Simpson, Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, all the usual characters. But the Oregon's pass defense grew up a ton today. So I think that matchup would step up huge for them. So, all right. Yeah, and then I'll just do a quick score check. There hasn't been anything too crazy today. The Kansas State-Utah game was kind of a barn burner, and Utah pulled that one out. That one may end up dropping them in the polls. Ooh, Georgia Tech is getting rocked by Pitt right now. That's an interesting one. Let's see. Penn State's dominating Nebraska. Tennessee's rolling over Florida. No shock there. The Washington-UCLA game will be interesting. I'll probably tune into that one at 7:30. But I mean, Ohio State won big over Rutgers. Ohio State, their last few games, they've gotten to slow starts in the first half. I wish my friend Jared was here. He's a subscriber that I've chatted with a lot on these live streams. Would love to hear his take on the Ohio State slow starts recently. Texas A&M rolled over Samford. Georgia rolled over Charlotte. Like, this should be a national holiday of the SEC teams playing cupcakes. Because they're all doing it. Alabama rolled 56-0 over Eastern Illinois. Yeah, nothing too eventful this week. It was a pretty quiet week in college football. But some key takeaways from the game for me. I think the Oregon Ducks offense was finally playing up to close to its potential, which is scary given that we didn't have DeCorian Moore, Garen Brett Jr., and we may get those guys back. I think it was a great opportunity for the defense to be exposed to a different type of offense. And we watched this team grow up in front of our eyes, which is a really tough thing to do, is to not only grow in the middle of the season, but to grow in the middle of a game, which we saw. I was a little worried that the Ducks wouldn't be able to slow down those elite wide receivers from USC, but Dan Lanning's an elite defensive mind, so he can obviously figure it out, especially when you have an experienced safety in the back end like Dylan Thieneman. This sealed a playoff spot for the Ducks. I firmly believe that, no matter what happens next week. But I think this team is getting hot at the right time, and I think they're finally playing up to the potential that everyone thought. And maybe that's what boosts Oregon in the rankings, is that they get another great resume builder, and the eye test looked phenomenal. They looked like one of the best teams in the country today. They were always in control of the game, even though the game looked close at times. Oregon was in control of the game and really dominated the game. And then, like I said, I think for this team, I think this was a great opportunity to prepare for playing teams like Ohio State down the stretch, Indiana like stretch, Alabama down the stretch, even Texas A&M down the stretch. And yeah, like always, I will be doing a live stream after the Ducks game next week. Has that game time been announced yet? I don't think so. Oregon, Washington, game time. Okay, so that'll also be 12:30. So I'll be doing a live stream probably right around 5 o'clock like I did today. As always, please make sure to like and subscribe and turn on those post notifications so you don't miss when I go live. And thank you so much for watching. My name is Zach with the Sports Corner at Choose Venture Media, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.